Why, hello there. Welcome to Smart Aspirations with Justin Huff. Sit back, chill out, and go on a journey around the world. Around the world. Justin will discuss tales of hope, discovery, and general irreverence with some of the most dynamic personalities in the travel business. Remember, we do cool shit, and so can you.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in today. My name is Justin Huff and you are listening to Smart Aspirations. Today, my guest was a really delight to host. His name's Hans Pfister and he is part of the Cayuga Collection. They're a company that has loads of gorgeous lodges throughout Central America, specifically Costa Rica and Panama and Nicaragua. I'd sold their properties in Costa Rica many moons ago, almost a lifetime ago. And the feedback was always incredible. Hans is from Germany and got his tourism start really through marriage. And he was working in hospitality in Germany. He married, I believe the story goes, he'll explain this in more depth in the interview. They moved to Costa Rica and he started working in opening up lodges there. We got connected initially through my friend Brooke Berlin. Shout out to Brooke and the crew consulting. Major thank you again for this. And when we had a preliminary chat, like I always do before guests come on the show, especially if I don't know them and we're kind of going in cold. And when I became more familiarized, is that even a word? When I became more familiar with his properties, the one that jumped out was the one in Nicaragua, Jicaro Island Lodge. And Nicaragua as a destination by its own right is completely off the beaten path for the intrepid guest. And that's what we are as a company, that Swaggy Swan is as a company. We want to showcase these types of experiences and destinations first and foremost. Of course, we can book the Costa Ricas, and of course, we can book the Panamas and the more mainstream destinations in this area, especially for a new traveler that hasn't been outside of the country yet, or maybe has been to Western Europe and looking for something a little bit more adventurous. But we really want to showcase and put the spotlight on destinations like Nicaragua that aren't for everybody. And we'd mentioned, or Hans said in the podcast, when you come back from a place like Nicaragua and you're around people at a party and you say that you went to this place and everybody's like, oh my God, are you serious? Like tell me about that. And you're the only person in the room that's done something this wild. So I totally love that. Hans is super fun to chat with. He's got a great heart, and you can see that he's done so much for the community, for the destination of Nicaragua in itself. The interview was something that I'm really proud of, and we had a lot of fun doing it. So without further ado, here is Hans Pfister and myself chatting about Nicaragua. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoy. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Smart Aspirations with Justin Huff. I'm your host, Justin Huff, and I've got an extraordinary guest this morning. Mr. Hans Pfister of the Cayuga Collection is joining us straight from his home in Central America. And the Cayuga Collection has a stunning array of gorgeous lodges throughout Central America. And when I was introduced to Hans, one in particular jumped out in my mind, especially since Swaggy Swan Travel specializes in off the beaten path. Hans has a property in Nicaragua called Jicaro Island Lodge. And I'm curious, Hans, what kind of reaction do you get from family and friends back in Europe, or anybody that you meet at a cocktail party and you say, I have a lodge in Nicaragua? What's the first thing how do people react to that?
Yeah. Good morning. Yeah. Thanks for having me on the program. It changed over the years, and it's like a little bit of an up and down. So originally, when I started working in Nicaragua with other lodges and doing some consulting, like in around 2000, 2001, people were like, "What? Nicaragua? Are you crazy?" The pictures of the Sandinista revolution, the Iran-Contra affair in the White House were very fresh still, and a lot of people said, "No, Nicaragua, that's not a tourism destination." So I've worked for for 15 years, really hard to convince people that Nicaragua is a beautiful country with beautiful people, very friendly, warm-hearted people. And then it actually started to work out quite well. And people are like, okay, I'll give it a try. I was able to convince my parents to visit, my brother, friends, eventually. And then, but then again, there was a political crisis 2.5 years ago that made things a lot more difficult again. Again, we were just on our way up again, and then COVID crisis hit, and now we're again on hold. So it's really been an up and down. But in general, people are like, "What, Nicaragua?" Everybody understands that you can do tourism in Costa Rica and even Panama, where we also have a lodge. But in Nicaragua, it's still a little bit. People are like, "Wow, really?" But yeah, that's the reaction.
I think the intrepid client really that wants to experience something truly different that people haven't done would see what you have in Nicaragua and be like salivating. Mm-hmm. It looks incredible.
Yes.
We'll include some pictures and photos on the YouTube link for that. Yeah. For me personally, when I was learning about your lodge and learning about Nicaragua, I've sold Nicaragua in the past during my career in tourism. Is there kind of a Nicaragua 101 where you can explain to the listeners like the political history without going in way too much detail?
Yeah, it's well, I would say it was it's a almost typical situation for many Latin American, African countries, mm-hmm. of going from a family-centered dictatorship being overthrown by a more communist revolution in the 70s, establishing a more communist government that is supported by Cuba, the Soviet Union during the Cold War. Right. And then, actually, interesting enough, the Sandinistas, the communist revolutionaries in the 90s turned over power to an elected government again. So it was actually a peaceful revolution going backwards to an elected government. However, the Sandinista revolutionary Daniel Ortega mm-hmm. then ran again for president and was elected democratically again into power. Right. There's some questions about some of the deals that were cut and some of the things that were done there, but it was an election, and he got back into power legally, where he still is, and must say that actually that government, when it was reelected, did some good things for the people. Mm-hmm. Was actually supportive of some of the development of the country. But then when there was some uprising or some demonstrations about 2.5 years ago, it clamped down very brutally on its citizen to maintain power. And ever since then, there has been tensions between parts of the population and the government. So we are in a bit of in a situation where you have a government that is has taken on some dictatorial powers, mm-hmm. and parts of the population that are not in agreement but are afraid to do anything about it because of the clampdown that has happened. And there's another big part of the population that support the government. So I have mm-hmm. to say that also. It's not it's a split. So that's more or less the situation.
Okay. And thank you for explaining that. I think, it's for me, just knowing, I see a lot of this stuff around the world in many of the destinations that we cover, but it doesn't detract from the incredible experience in working with warm, local, friendly people in a sustainable way. And tell me about how, speaking of local people, tell me about when you set up the Island Lodge and everything, and how did you recruit staff? How did you train them? And what made you focus on your specific location right now?
Okay, well, let's start with a specific location. So we're on an island in Lake Nicaragua, mm-hmm. overlooking the Mombacho volcano. It's about a 20-minute boat ride from the colonial town of Granada. And the way this came about was that we in our lodges in Costa Rica, we had a guest from the UK. And she, traveled from within Costa Rica, then traveled to Nicaragua, came to Granada and said, well, this is such a beautiful place, but there's no comparable lodging operations here that would meet my standards. Mm-hmm. She's a high-end traveler.
Sure.
And so she's like, well, it wouldn't be great to build an eco lodge here. And so she was at lunch in a restaurant, and then one of those pin boards saw an ad that said island for sale. And when she saw the price, she couldn't believe it, because she said she couldn't even get a garage for that in England, in London, right? So she bought 2 islands, and then contacted us, since she had stayed with us, and asked us to help her develop the concept and then build the lodge and run the lodge. This was a little over 10 years. Well, we opened a little over 10 years ago, so this was maybe like 12, 13 years ago when we started that process. And yeah, so that's how Jicaro became Jicaro, that island lodge. We built it. Then we started to put together a team, which also wasn't easy, because again, you don't have really experience in high-end luxury sustainable tourism in Nicaragua as we do here. But we were able to get the team up and running pretty fast, because we recruited people that not necessarily were experts in sustainability. Our general manager, for example, they've been there since the beginning. He has more of a career in music. He's a musician.
That's cool. That's cool.
But he, then went into tourism, and we brought him and the core team members, like 3 or 4 more, to Costa Rica to train them at our hotels and lodges here, and then take them back. So they understood what the expectation of the guests were, how we work, what's the operating procedures and everything. And that gave us like a head start. So right from the beginning, we could provide a really high class, high end experience in Nicaragua for the travelers that were coming.
Okay, excellent. You'd mentioned sustainability. What does Jicaro Island Lodge do in terms of its practices in sustainable tourism?
So Jicaro is aligned with the rest of the Cayuga Collection, all of our hotels in Central America in terms of certain practices. So we have the policy to work only with locals, to only use local products. So you won't find imported products on the menu, for example. We all the materials, the decor, everything is produced locally. Nicaragua has a great artisan culture, workmanship. They do amazing things in wood. Most of the hotel is made out of wood. So all of so this focus on local is really important, and that goes right into our focus on people. So we have career paths, so again, we don't bring in the expats from abroad to run a luxury hotel. We train them and we offer them career paths so they can move up through the ranks and have, have a career in tourism. Besides that, the obvious things of energy conservation. The lodge does not have air conditioning in the rooms because it's built in a way where there's a great cross ventilation through the room, so you don't really need the air conditioning. Yeah, right. And the lighting is all LED lighting. The water is heated with solar panels, et cetera, et cetera. All of those things that for us are now complete standard. Our involvement in the community is really important. So very soon we started to work with local schools in the area, where we helped in education more than anything, and then also raised money together with our guests for infrastructure projects. So we built bathrooms, we built safe drinking water for the schools. We helped them get supplies, and all of those things over the last year. So the school system in the last 10 years in that area in the lake, which is a pretty remote area, has improved tremendously. And it even went to programs like a daily glass of milk for the students, psychology help for some of the parents. We brought psychologists in because there were a lot of issues. And so yeah, I mean, that's just like a quick overview of the things we do. I can talk about recycling, how we hate to recycle. We really try to avoid trash at all cost.
Okay.
And only if it's absolutely necessary, then we will recycle whatever is left over.
And now, can guests actually see that behind the scenes when they're visiting the lodge?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's more
all of our hotels and lodges, we offer a back of the house tour. We're a transparent hotel. Everything is open to see. We have no secrets. You go into the laundry, you go into the maintenance area, you go into where the employees eat, or in some of our lodges even sleep.
Wow.
When it's very remote. Well, you don't go into that bedroom, but like in the area where the camp is, right?
Sure.
You see our vegetable and herb gardens. I mean, it's just completely open, and so we have this sustainability tour to explain our guests what is behind all of this. What does it take to run a sustainable hotel or lodge? And it's really amazing how when guests stay at our hotels and they're very satisfied guests. They love the food and the service and the experience and the rooms. But once they've done that tour, they just become raving fans. They're like, "Wow, this is amazing! This is unbelievable! I've never seen anything like that." And our goal is to inspire them to then pass on that passion about sustainability that we have onto their own lives, private lives, or also many of our guests are decision makers in companies, in government, in other organizations, and so that we really hope that they then take this and move on.
Well, you're leaving a massive lasting impact on somebody's psyche when they travel around the world too. Me personally, when I visit places in Tanzania in the middle of the Serengeti, and I see stuff like this, like similar to what you're doing, and then I'll go somewhere else and I'll see the complete opposite. It really makes a lasting impression for sure. We've talked about, you guys have been there for over a decade now. Your impact is clearly doing something positive. You know what you're doing. Guests can get involved behind the scenes and see that firsthand. That's all great. What other incredible experiences do you offer on the lodge?
Oh yeah, so the lodge is really a place where you can just be in the middle of the lake and just forget about everything, relax, and just listen to the water come against the rocks and the wind going through the trees, and just forget about life and everything around you. But there's so many things to do. I mean, you could stay there for 2-3 weeks and do a different activity, different tour every day. Okay. So since we're located in a lake, there's obviously a lot of water activities, stand-up paddling and fishing. We take and fishing is really going with the local fishermen, and you learn how they throw their nets and how they do the traditional fishing, and then hopefully bring something back for dinner. Kayaking, bird watching by kayaking. There's obviously a lot of water birds there. And then we have this volcano right next to us that you can hike up to. You can also take a tour up. There's canopy tours, and some of those attractions. One of the coolest things, and my sons did that, and they say it was one of the coolest things they've done, is there's a volcano that's about 3 hours away where you hike up and then you sandboard down.
No way.
And so it's an active volcano where you actually walk up and you look down into the lava, and it's hot and it's crazy, and then you get out and then you sandboard down, and that's one of the most incredible experiences that my sons have told me that they've ever had. And I unfortunately haven't been able to do it because when I go up there, I'm usually caught up in work and things. But it's definitely on my bucket list to do that, especially after what they've told us. And then the colonial town of Granada is a destination in itself, which is, as I said, just 20 minutes by boat. So you can go and spend the day there. We have tours. You can go learn how to roll your own cigars. It's a cigar making center. You can go on the chocolate tour. You can go visit all the colonial churches and the colonial buildings and all the history related to Granada, which is the oldest colonial town on mainland America. There's some that are older on the islands. Yeah,
no idea.
Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic, those areas, but on mainland America, Granada is the oldest settlement, and it was hugely important because it was the connection between the Atlantic and the Pacific. So the travelers from Europe would come up the Rio San Juan, which goes into the Caribbean Sea, into the Atlantic, travel up the river, go through Lake Nicaragua to Granada, and from Granada to the Pacific, it really is only a very short, maybe 40 kilometers, maybe 40 miles, something. Sure. I don't have the exact number, but it's really a short thing. And then you're on the Pacific coast in San Juan del Sur, which is the port, and then you could go up to the west coast of the United States today, or South America. And it was actually the route that Vanderbilt developed to get people across during the gold rush. 1849 California. So there's a lot of history related to that. Mark Twain traveled through this area and left a footprint. So as I said, you can explore, you can learn. There's so much history, there's so much to see that you can easily spend 3 weeks there. But most of our guests spend like 4, 5, 6 nights usually on the island.
6 nights with tons to do. And just what you just said, I had absolutely no idea. And I love learning about things that are just completely blow my mind that I haven't heard of before, just like that, that are right under your nose. And you had mentioned part of what you just said, Nicaragua is a bi-coastal nation. So you've got the Caribbean and you've got the Pacific. And if I'm not mistaken, didn't the U.S. try to build a second canal through Nicaragua at some point?
Correct. Actually, it was okay. The story of the canal is interesting because the canal was built in Panama, sure. but really the first most feasible route was through Nicaragua, and it was more or less what I described. The Rio San Juan through Lake Nicaragua into the Pacific.
Sure.
And it was almost on its way through Congress when there was an explosion of a volcano. This was in, 18 something. There was an explosion of a volcano somewhere in the Caribbean, and it freaked everybody out in the United States about volcanoes, right? So like volcanoes are dangerous, but volcanoes kill people. Well, Nicaragua is full of volcanoes. It has, you turn around and you see another cone-shaped volcano, which is amazing, right? But it really freaked out people. So actually the project died in Nicaragua. It was turned down by Congress in the States, and they moved on to Panama. Of course, there were some political, economic interests there as well involved. But that happened. And then, what is it now? About 4 or 5 years ago, there was this big hype that the Chinese would build a canal, another canal through Nicaragua. But it also seemed that was a bit of a, I don't want to say scam, but it wasn't quite ready. There were Chinese on the ground, measuring and doing things, but in the end, nothing became of it. And I'm not really sure that business person that was in charge there is gone by now. I don't know what the deal was with the government, but there's no more talk of a canal through Nicaragua anymore.
Probably a great thing for sustainability, for sure.
For the country, in terms of tourism, in terms of sustainability, yes, because it would have altered a lot of things there.
And there's roughly the entire eastern part of the country. That's all rainforest, right?
Yes, there's most of the country that's doesn't even have roads, doesn't even have cities. That's just rainforest, and that's mostly on the Atlantic coast. And just like many countries in Central America that have two coasts, Costa Rica, Panama, and Nicaragua, some of them, Guatemala as well, it's completely different cultures. One coast to the other is completely different cultures. I was just, we came back yesterday from a hotel we have in Puerto Viejo, which is on the Caribbean coast of Costa Rica. And it's another language, it's another food culture, it's another music culture, it's everything is just so different from the Pacific coast, and the same is true for Nicaragua, for Panama. So I also encourage people to experience both coasts if they can, because it really is quite something. And how great is it that you're in such a small country where you can have breakfast on the Caribbean coast and have cocktails on the Pacific coast. I mean, in your country, in the U.S., that it's possible, but you need some serious flights in between,
serious flights and serious time.
Yeah, serious time. Here it's very easy to do.
I love that. And let's say that I've got roughly 10 to 12 days or so, and if I wanted to combine Jicaro Island Lodge and both coasts of Nicaragua, how would that work operationally? Where would I stay?
Yeah.
Talk to me.
I think, I think there's 3 destinations that I would recommend so you don't hop around like crazy. And
Sure.
So one is one of the lodges or hotels on the Pacific coast, around San Juan del Sur, or a little bit further north. Beautiful beaches, great surfing, and a really nice, typical beach vacation. Then you have Jicaro Lodge in the middle, of the country, where you can do more of the cultural explorations and the lake culture. And then if you want to go to the Caribbean, there's 2 small islands off the coast. They're called the Corn Islands. So there's Big Corn Island and Little Corn Island. And there's some nice lodges on those, especially on Little Corn Island, where you can then have a Caribbean island experience,
Sure.
Again, in a whole different thing. And you connect that with, from the Pacific coast to Jicaro. That's pretty easy in a land transfer. In 2.5 hours, you're in one place and the other. And then to the island, you would take a flight from Managua, a local flight, to Corn Island, and then a boat ride to Little Corn Island. So it's adventurous. There's a lot of trains, planes, and automobiles, but it's fun, and it's totally doable, and it definitely for the more advanced traveler, it's a great experience.
Would you recommend Nicaragua for a first time kind of intrepid experience, or is this something that seasoned travelers would appreciate a bit more?
It depends. It's all relative, right? I think if you're leaving the country, your own country, for the first time, Nicaragua is maybe not the best place to go.
Okay.
Costa Rica is a safer bet.
Okay.
But if you've traveled to Europe and maybe you've been to Asia, why not? You know how to travel, and definitely if you've been to Africa, you'll love Nicaragua, because you'll find a lot of similarities in the people, in the even the landscape to a certain degree. So I mean it's for a more advanced traveler, but it's also you work with you and our DMCs on the ground that have good experience dealing with people. It's all seamless. It can be done all seamless, and then you can venture out and do as much adventure as you want.
And once guests book something with us, it's very important for them to know that their hand is held from the moment they arrive until the moment they depart. There's no micromanaging. There's no Google Maps. There's no apprehension. Everything's all sorted out for you. It's completely seamless.
No, and one of the things I always, what I used for a few years, when we're just starting to ramp up Nicaragua and was becoming more acceptable to go there, and people weren't raising eyebrows as much, but just a little bit, said, imagine, your next cocktail party, your next dinner with friends, and you're telling them you're going to Nicaragua, you were in Nicaragua. I mean, you're the coolest person on the table automatically.
You're the coolest guy in the room. Nobody else has done that.
Exactly.
Totally.
Everybody, So I've been trying to use that a little bit as trying to convince people as well.
I use that too. I've said it before on this podcast. I call it the cocktail party effect. When you go out and somebody's just like, "Oh, I stayed at the Four Seasons in Paris." It's and okay, great. Yeah. Anybody can do that, but it's just when you drop like, "Oh, I went to Nicaragua. I went to Mongolia. I went." It's just like, you did what? And then everybody starts paying attention to what's coming out of your mouth, because you did this wild experience nobody else could dream of. And that's what gets the ball rolling. I love that.
Right.
You had mentioned something earlier, and I'm more curious about your experience and as it relates to operating in Central America. Did you come in? I know you started in Costa Rica, right?
Yeah.
And did you come in with any language skills at all, or was it just completely cold?
Pretty cold. I grew up in southern Germany, and my first foreign language was French, and then I learned English. I went to university in the United States, in upstate New York at Cornell, and then I got and that's where I met my then girlfriend, now wife, and I moved to Costa Rica to to follow her basically. And
right. It happens.
and I had like 2 classes of Spanish in university, and it was like, hola, me llamo Hans, like it was pretty basic. So I took a management position in a hotel when I arrived here, and in the beginning it was really hard, so I would remember spending time cleaning rooms with the maids and asking, how do you say that? How do you say almohada, pillow, cama, bed, gancho, hanger, like just going through these things and learning on the go. I didn't have formal classes. And then I was just thrown in and, learn by doing, right?
Totally. Right by the seat of your pants.
Yeah,
I've heard, I grew up in South Florida, and there are loads of Central American communities, Mexican communities from the Caribbean that speak Spanish, and all the dialects are totally different. And there's a little Managua in Miami, as I'm sure you know. How would you? Is it easy to jump between Costa Rica and Nicaragua and speak your version of Spanish and have it like? Is there a massive difference between the two?
Oh yeah, there's a difference. So when I go to Nicaragua, they hear a German speaking Costa Rican Spanish, right? So they're like somewhat confused, right?
It's completely bastardized.
Yeah. But then what happens to me is when I spend some time there, I actually start imitating a little bit their Spanish, or I use some of their words, just because you want to kind of adjust and fit in with them. But I think it happens to all to a lot of the expats or residents now, or foreigners that have moved to this part of the country, that have married or have settled here, have a company, that they just adapt the dialect or language of the country they're at. So when I go to Argentina, people will say, "Oh, you're from Costa Rica, right?" That's just because I sound very different from their Spanish, or
completely. Yeah, it's totally different. And should guests expect there to be any language barrier when they're doing excursions, or is everything conducted in perfect English?
Yeah, by now, in the beginning, it was still harder to find people in Nicaragua. Costa Rica is very easy English. Nicaragua in the beginning was still a little bit harder. By now, I think we have quite a few good guides in English. And what happened as tourism was starting to do really well, a lot of Nicaraguans that lived in the States started to come back, and they obviously came back with perfect English, right? because they lived there. So language barrier for me, I don't think that's an issue in Nicaragua.
Never been an issue. That's good. That's good. And I also think that a developing country that's new to this level of tourism, having that little bit of a barrier is part of the adventure. And I don't think that it really, I don't think it would really put off anyone. Now, back to the experience. If you had to describe one signature experience from Jicaro, what would it be?
From a guest point of view, you mean?
Yeah. What's the ultimate thing that or what's the thing that you have to do when you're there?
Yeah. So we have a floating deck in the lake, just a little bit off. So that awesome. that floating deck, is used in the day that people, take a swim up, lie on the deck a little bit, like what you have in many lakes, right? But at night we actually use this deck for romantic dinners. So we set it up on a table. We take a couple over there with a rowboat. They sit down, and then they get served a 3-course gourmet dinner with bottle of wine, and everything gets served by the waiter. It's just that the waiter, every time he brings something or takes something, needs to get in the rowboat and row out and row back. So it's kind of a fun experience, and you're there, overlooking the volcano. The sun is just setting behind it, and it's a magical experience.
That sounds super romantic. And next question is Jicaro good for families, and do you have an age limit?
Yeah, so we do have an age limit. The age limit is 12 years.
Okay, good to know.
During summer vacation and spring break, we bring it down to 8 years. Mm-hmm. So it is a great experience for families, but families with older children. Okay. So it's not for babies, just because of the island with the rocks and everything. There's a lot of things where,
I've got a 10-year-old. I understand completely.
Jumping off, and you gotta be careful. It's not made out of rubber. It's
Sure.
it's the real thing, right?
Completely. And now kids are. It brings me to my second question. I'm sorry. Kids are kids and adults can have these really limited attention spans these days. People want to be constantly, introduced to new things. And I think that it's kind of a shame that people don't step away and just take the time to relax. Are you seeing most of your guests getting after it in terms of being super busy throughout the day doing activities, or are they more chilled out and or is it a toss up?
All of the above. I've met so many New Yorkers that come with their agenda filled.
Sure.
8 a.m., 10 a.m., 12 a.m. lunch, like right? And that's their mode of living, right? And I'm not gonna fight that, right?
No,
that's what they want to do. You can do that. And then you have people that just arrive and say, and we tell them about the tours and everything. And they're like, yeah, thank you. And they just settle down. And then what we find is that there's a transition. Sometimes you get the people with a high-powered agenda, and after day one, they're like, oh, I don't really need to do this. They start canceling things and just kind of settling in,
chilling out.
And then the other people that come in chilling hear about really cool experience and say, oh, let's try this. So I always tell people, just come, figure it out on the ground, see how you feel. It is hot, it is humid. Sometimes it rains, sometimes it's sunny, sometimes it's this, just play it by ear. We can organize excursions, tours, all within 24 hours. And so just, be on vacation, be spontaneous, be chill, and take it day by day. You don't need to have, this is not the kind of place where you need to purchase the fast pass 3 weeks in advance, or you need to buy the Eiffel Tower ticket for a specific time for certain. No, it's a different vibe, right? It's much more relaxed.
That's a huge selling point, I think. I don't want to date this podcast. I want people to be able to, and YouTube video, I want people to be able to access this years from now. But I do want to say we are in 2020. There are things going on in the world. Take me through the moment you were like, oh my God, this is serious. And like we need to pay attention to this. This is something that is totally going to have an impact on us, and how you expect things to go from into the future.
Sorry. Well, I guess I was on a National Geographic Unique Lodges. Jicaro is part of the National Geographic Unique Lodges meeting in Ireland in end of January, and then I was on sales calls in Paris. That same trip. And it still seemed everything pretty normal, right?
Totally.
It was like, looking fine. And then February also was still kind of okay, although it was starting to become a little bit weird. And then by March, there was definitely something up. And then I remember I was doing a consulting for a new project in one of the beaches in Costa Rica. And I was coming back to the hotel after the day. And all of a sudden in the restaurant, I see everybody taking out their cell phones and going crazy. And it's like, borders are closing, travel warning, this is it. Yep. And everybody's just freaking out. I think it was the 12th or 13th of March, something
that was when it happened, right? Yeah.
Right. And then that's where I realized, okay, something's going on. And we've been working on a code orange, code yellow, code orange, code red scenarios. And we had just gotten the code orange when I was like, be careful, there might be some, less travel and everything. And we went from code yellow to orange to red basically in 2 weeks. It was just like, boom, and then by the end of March, all hotels were closed. Last guests, we took care of them until the end, got on a plane, left. We basically, put the hotels in hibernation mode, and we're just like, what happened here, right? And so yeah, it was super fast, super crazy. We made the decision not to. We had to lay off some people, but under the Central American laws, they get a very good severance pay package. So that was, that's why we said, okay, we'll lay you off rather than just suspend you where you don't get anything. And then we kept more than half of our staff at a reduced salary, and continue to train them and continue to really work on the hotels, make sure they look like new, because we knew when this is coming back, we really wanted it to come back fast. We wanted to be ready and do. So we were expecting that this would take until November, December of this year. And it seems like in terms of international travel, it's going somewhat in that direction.
I think so too.
But about 2 or 3 weeks ago, we had an opportunity to open for the local market. And now it's 2 weeks. We opened one hotel. We've opened another hotel this weekend and another one in 2 weeks. And we're seeing really great demand from the local market for our products, of people that would normally travel to Europe, to Africa, to Asia, or on cruises or whatever, that are stuck here in Costa Rica. And I'm now saying, okay, I'm going to try this Cayuga Collection. It seems to be, attracting a lot of well-traveled people from the outside. Why not try us what they have? So this has been going quite better than I expected. So that's where we are right now. We're waiting for a date for the opening of the airport. It is supposed to be June 30th, but we're all sure it's going to get extended.
Right.
We just take it day by day, the wave, the second wave, the third wave, what's going to happen, who knows? We're just going to take it day by day and make sure that we can take care of our staff. We've been raising funds or providing funds for the staff members that we did have to let go, and they have been running out of their severance pay to help them with food. But yeah, we're just trying to do our best to make it through that. We developed this battle cry. We call it
battle
strong
cry.
Today, extraordinary tomorrow. So we just got to be strong now. We're strong today because we know we'll be extraordinary and even better tomorrow. So that's basically what we're holding on to.
No, I love that. And on a similar note, for me, we're never going to get this downtime again. And how can you fine tune your operations and redefine your values and belief organization as an entity? What do you stand for? How can you make your processes more efficient for the client and the communities that you work with? And I really love to see that you're using this time so positively. I think it's going to have a massive impact. My hope is that there's such a demand once the shroud is lifted, whenever that may be, towards the end of 2020, 2021, whenever. I'm hoping that there's going to be a huge demand and appreciation for these far-flung, castaway, remote destinations. And I hope within my heart that people will appreciate the globe more and what we have. Our ecosystem, our environment, our lives, they're very, very fragile, as we've seen. This is going to expose a lot of people for who they really are. And I just love seeing what you've done. I think, I know that you guys are going to weather the storm really, really well and come out leaner and meaner than before, for sure. So I'm going to leave it with that. Hans, if you have any parting comments for clients to take away and what you would like, any message about Nicaragua and the future of tourism there, let us know, for sure. Yeah,
I think, like you just said it, when we come back to travel, let's make sure that the travel counts, that it's really meaningful, that it's really enriching, that you learn something new, that you're exploring something new, that you go out of your comfort zone a little. Like what we talked about, the Four Seasons in Paris. Oh, I like to stay at the Four Seasons in Paris if I could afford it. Who doesn't, right? But maybe a luxury eco lodge, a National Geographic eco lodge in Nicaragua, in Panama. In a place that's maybe a little bit off the beaten path, try that, and if that's what the crisis helped us do, then that's a good thing. And I was just writing a blog yesterday about buyouts, right? And so, for example, think of Jicaro Island Lodge, 9 rooms,
Perfect for a buyout.
on an island. It's perfect for a buyout, and it's really not that expensive. So you can still travel within your bubble, and while we still have to travel within our bubbles, or once the bubble is no longer necessary, you can come back with all of your friends and travel again. And the person that put us in touch, Brooke, she and her husband were in Jicaro in January, celebrating her husband's 50th birthday with a group of friends, and it was amazing. I mean, I only saw the pictures, but she said something. This is like Disney World for adults, but just the real thing. Right?
I did see Brooke's Facebook post with Brooke and Johann's all of their adventures in Nicaragua. I was super jealous, and I was like, that planted the seed. And then when Brooke had mentioned your name, I was like, oh, I'm on it. Let's do it. Let's do it for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, Hans, thank you so much for your time. I cannot wait for the world to learn more about Nicaragua, Jicaro Island Lodge, the Cayuga Collection, everything that you guys stand for. It's awesome. So I really appreciate everything, man.
Okay. Thank you, Justin, and best to you. And I hope to see you down here sometime soon.
Can't wait, man. Let's do it. All right.
Okay.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Smart Aspirations. Justin Huff is the manager of Swaggy Swan Travel. For all travel-related inquiries, please visit www.swaggyswan.com. That's www.swaggyswan.com. And click inquiries. Have a stupendous day, and we'll see you next week.